Right, I'll make a start. Afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much indeed for joining the latest session of the Eden Campus Industry Club. It's really good to see you all here. Many familiar names and faces and a few new people as well, which is great. Today's session is going to focus particularly around the work of the Hydrogen Accelerator, more about that project soon. But I think it serves as an example of how a concerted approach towards the deployment of hydrogen technologies can really make a difference in terms of how energy systems operate at a local level. And you'll see some really good examples in this session of how the Hydrogen Accelerator has been able to enable projects to operate in a much faster pace to really come to some kind of fruition across Scotland. So it'll be a really interesting session. We'll be in this Teams meeting for the next hour, and then at 2 o'clock there'll be an opportunity for people to drop back into Gathertown and to have a little bit more networking time. I'm Ian Hill. I'm the Strategic Lead for Innovation at Eden Campus. I'll be doing the link person job between the presentations. But what I'd first like to do is to invite Professor John Irvin, who instigated the Hydrogen Accelerator at the University of St Andrews, to tell us a little bit about the Hydrogen Accelerator. The one thing I do have to tell you about the meeting is that we are recording this session. I hope people are all comfortable with that. We'll make the recordings available and send out a link to participants after the meeting. So thanks for coming along. John, it's over to you, I think, to tell us a bit more about the Hydrogen Accelerator.
Okay, many thanks, Ian. I guess there was a number of us instigated this. Fiona is certainly behind the scenes, and very much Transport Scotland and St Andrews. Now, the Hydrogen Accelerator, I should probably say a few things about what it isn't. It isn't particularly one of those economically focused accelerators that looks to finance business. The example I always think about is H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. So the Hydrogen Accelerator was used in that book and films to launch missiles to invade the Earth. That's not quite what we are, but we would like to change the world. That's the key mission of the Hydrogen Accelerator. It's to enable changes in the energy economy, especially in Scotland. We're looking to facilitate the uptake of green technologies and especially hydrogen in Scotland, and we're focusing on the transport system. That's high value and difficult to decarbonize sector. That hydrogen can add a lot to electric vehicles, and especially in larger vehicles. Our role is very much as a catalyst. So we're trying to enable projects to go ahead. In particular, that involves removing or reducing barriers. We're very much about sharing knowledge and particularly lessons learned. It's not something you can advertise too readily, but a lot of mistakes have been made, and as similar projects arise, we want to make sure that those mistakes are avoided and that we advance much more successfully. So we have capability to work with companies. We're very much here to support local government and to see the early implementation of transport, of hydrogen transport. It is important to note, though, that you can't just develop the application of hydrogen. You also need to develop the infrastructure and the production. So you need a holistic view of the whole hydrogen system, maybe even hydrogen economy, and we're here to enable that. Okay, and you can see our mission, which here. So we're very keen to work with people, and key people to speak to are Fiona and Martin Verbrecken, who Fiona Landy and Martin Verbrecken, who are going to jointly give the presentation now. So can I hand over to you guys to give the presentation? I don't know if Ian wants to make another introduction, but I think Martin and Fiona can take this up from here.
Yeah, that's fine. I've got nothing else to add. So Fiona and Martin, please tell us a bit more about the detail.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Ian. Okay, as John was just saying there, we're actually funded by Transport Scotland, and this was a commitment by the Scottish Government in their programme for government 2019. And as you can see, we work in partnership with the University of Strathclyde, and we have a reach across all sectors to really try and get that collaboration, because that's one thing about the hydrogen sector that you really require, is to have that collaboration and really try and position Scotland at the forefront of that global economy in the hydrogen sector. You know, we have all the right ingredients. We have the wind and we have the water, and we have the expertise. I mean, especially with the just transition for the oil and gas industry. So I think looking right across all these expertise that we have a fantastic opportunity to really make a very big difference to the Scottish economy within this sector. Next slide, please, Martin. And this is our team, quite a compact and bijou team, led obviously by John as our chair, and deputy chair Graham Burt, and our director is Jerry Agnew. Behind the scenes, there's Sinead Jane is our operations manager, very much leading on the industry club initiative with myself and my winger, Martin Verbracken. We work very, very closely together. Martin provides all that technical expertise when we're engaging with organisations about how to get these projects off the ground. Next slide, please, Martin. We tend to put this slide in because I think it just keeps us very focused on our challenging timeline for decarbonisation in Scotland. You know, obviously going 5 years before the rest of the UK. And we are making some headway, which you will see when we start to talk about the projects. But, you know, hydrogen projects take a long time to get off the ground to now, and they've been very, very small. So now this challenge is to really start to scale up the opportunities, really large-scale production of hydrogen and fleets. Even though we're funded through Transport Scotland, and we are very focused on the transport sector, as John mentioned, you know, it is a challenging sector to decarbonise. But also we're looking at other sectors as well, industry, heat, but very much that cross-cutting, advancing the technologies that will actually help us to reach our targets of 2045. Next slide, please, Martin. You need to skip a couple there. Right, thanks. One more. Thank you. Just a bit of background to myself. So I've been in the hydrogen sector for about 11 years, originally from Aberdeen, then seconded out to the Scottish Cities Alliance, which is a unique collaboration between the Scottish Government and the 7 cities, which is all about doing projects at scale, attracting inward investment to the 7 cities. And part of that programme was the commissioning of Element Energy to carry out some research about how do we actually create a hydrogen economy across those 7 cities. And now and this is back in 2013, and now to the recommendations, there were 12 in total, 4 strands were taken forward, which I led on, and that was the large-scale production of hydrogen, and it being green hydrogen, large-scale production of refueling infrastructure and fuel cell electric buses, which led us to join into an initiative, the Fuel Cells and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, which was about, it was really an ambitious project, and that was 14 cities to re-look at the commercialisation of hydrogen refueling infrastructure and fuel cell electric buses across European cities. At that particular time, only 2 cities in Scotland were able to move forward at that time, and that was Dundee and Aberdeen. Aberdeen have so far launched their second round of buses. Originally, they had Van Hool's from another project. They now have Right Bus from Northern Ireland. They've got 15 so far, which will move to 25. And Dundee will be deploying 12 buses. That project is underway, which I'll speak about in a little bit more detail. So the routes have already been chosen in Dundee, and that bus is going to be developed between Optair, who supply the Glider buses, another UK bus manufacturer, and then Arcola Energy, who are leading integration experts, will be doing all the fuel cell powertrain system for that particular bus, double deckers, and they will be run and operated by Explore Dundee, who are now part of McGill's. And then we will have the fueling infrastructure at Michelin Scotland Innovation Park, and that is also underway at the moment in terms of the tendering process. We also have the opportunity, I think many of you may know the site at MSIP, you'll see the big turbines there, two turbines, that we can actually generate that green electricity from those turbines as well. Next slide, please, Martin. Yeah, so just on the hydrogen refueling infrastructure, the tender process is underway for that. We have some very good organisations who've actually responded to that tender. St Andrews also led on a project in parallel with the deployment of the 12, and that is for a Bus 1 demonstrator. And that contract's going to be awarded to Arcola Energy, who were the successful tenderers this week. And that allows us to be able to demonstrate that bus at different events, to really start to get out that message about, encouraging citizens to move on to a bit that maybe shift back onto public transport, cleaning up the cities, traveling on clean, green, zero emission technologies. So I'm very excited about that particular project. And with my colleague Martin, we've really been supporting the Dundee Bus project as well, around that techno-economic analysis, and also looking at the total cost of ownership models, which are absolutely fundamental to try and make these projects really actually deploy and at scale. We've got to get the economics right. Next slide, please, Martin. Yeah, so with the Dundee Bus project, we're going to have the hydrogen refueling infrastructure based at the Mission Scotland Innovation Park, which is the home for sustainable mobility in Scotland. So we work very closely through St Andrews, the Hydrogen Accelerator, with our colleagues in MSIP. And with this project, it's now allowing us to reach right across the Tay region. So from the HRS that's going to be based at MSIP, we'll be looking at what other types of fleet vehicles we can start to deploy across the region with local authorities and also the private sector as well, and strategically start to look at where that infrastructure needs to be across the city region. Also, that helps Transport Scotland start to really understand, what we need to do to replicate these types of initiatives across other cities and regions in Scotland. Thank you, Martin. I'm just going to move on to another city, Glasgow. So I've been supporting Glasgow for that last 5 years. And from our early stage, quite small demonstration projects, it's now evident of how we can really start to scale up. And this is one example. Whiteley is probably one of the largest wind farms in Europe. And that's obviously owned by Scottish Power. So in partnership with ITM Power on the electrolyser side and BOC for the refueling infrastructure, there's the opportunity now to deploy a 20 megawatt electrolyser at Whiteley to really start to scale up the production and deployment of hydrogen refueling infrastructure right across the city region. And that will really start to enable all the regional authorities, the link back with Glasgow City Council, to actually start to redeploy in earnest different types of vehicles within their captive fleets. Can we, next slide please, Martin? Yeah, so also I've been supporting Eric Stewart, who was brought in to lead on their fleet strategy in terms of that decarbonisation. And during that analysis that Eric and his team have carried out, they make the stake in the ground to say that it's going to be hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles and hydrogen fueling infrastructure that can really make that difference. So even though the vehicles are more expensive and economics will improve the more we scale up around doing joint procurement across other local authorities and regional authorities, he's been able to start to really rationalise his fleet. So with the refuse collection vehicle, we secured funding from Transport Scotland for that prototype to be developed, and that will be demonstrated at COP this year. And on the back of that, there's been another award to Arcola Energy for further 19 of those refuse collection vehicles. But they can now do double shifting with those refuse collection vehicles. I mean, Glasgow produce something like 380,000 tonnes of waste a year. So those vehicles are real, real workhorses. So there's a big opportunity there to really start to look at rationalisation and really bringing some intelligence about how you actually run your captive fleets. Really exciting opportunities. So that's the first vehicle. They also have got 23 dual fuel gritters from Yelemco as well. But part of all these initiatives is about building up that supply chain and those jobs in Scotland as well, getting that level of expertise of what we need to be doing in terms of maintaining these vehicles going forward and making sure that we have the right apprenticeships right across Scotland. You know, bringing high value jobs to a rural economy is absolutely of paramount importance as well as cleaning up the cities as well. Thank you very much, Martin. Next slide. So the tender process is underway again, like in Dundee for the HRS. We're going to have both temporary and permanent refuelling, and this site is called Polmadie, and it's right next to that really massive big energy from waste plant called the Grec in Glasgow. But strategically, it's a very good place to be. Up the road is First Bus, next door is Transport Scotland, and Ulston is just down the road as well. So it would be a really, really good site. It'll have open access to the general public as well. And at this moment of time, myself and other colleagues from other organisations are actually engaging both publicly and privately with organisations to actually say, you know, this is the opportunity to ensure that, you know, with all the investment that Scottish Power and BOC and ITM are actually putting into the city as well at Whiteley, that there is going to be that demand so we can get those economics to really start to stack up and make some really significant decarbonisation going forward. Next slide, please, Martin. Okay, one more, please. I would just say one thing about this particular slide. So this is ScotRail's decarbonisation strategy for 2035 in conjunction with Transport Scotland Rail. So there isn't the plan to actually completely electrify the whole of the rail network in Scotland. And as you see on the left-hand side of the screen, going right up to Thurso, and on the right-hand side from Aberdeen up to Inverness, and just slightly further afield in yellow, and further down south, there's opportunities there for fuel cell electric trains to be running on those tracks. We will have our zero-emission train demonstrated this year at the Bowness and Kinneil Heritage Line. But again, already you can start to see that large-scale production of hydrogen, the off-take potential for such things as trains and other vessels like ferries, etc., can really make such a significant difference to Scotland in terms of decarbonisation. So a really fantastic opportunity there again. I'll hand over to my colleague Martin now, who'll take you through some of the rest of the slides on the trains. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. I'll see if I can actually turn my camera on now, without me kicking out. That's still showing. So yes, so yeah, with that preamble, so the zero emission train project was launched back in December 2020, and the main objectives were to convert a piece of existing rolling stock to hydrogen traction. So University of St Andrews basically procured an old piece of rolling stock, a class 314 from ScotRail, and it was decided that that was going to be converted into a piece of hydrogen rolling stock. And with that, the idea was to see how we can support the real decarbonisation targets, as just pointed out. And obviously, a much bigger part of that is to support the Scottish Government just transition ambitions and see if we can actually create these economic opportunities for Scotland as well. So not just to see how we can do the technology, but see how we can really create jobs and new skills in Scotland for the green economy. And another part of that was that fits into that is how can we, you know, develop that Scottish supply chain. So see how we can get other companies to come on board, maybe companies that already are active in the rail industry, or perhaps companies that are currently, say, in the oil and gas and like to transition, and see how we can support these companies as well, and that broader Scottish supply chain. So here we go. So the project was basically, or the delivery of the project was went out for tender, and the consortium that was awarded the contract, and it's a consortium of 4 partners. Here again, Acola Energy, our systems integrator, who have now moved or set up premises in Scotland, together with Arup, who are a big engineering consultancy company, Abid Risk Consulting, who gives specialist health and safety advice, and there's a third-party certification company, Aegis, who will give that sort of independent overview of the project. In the next slide, I'd just like to give you sort of a brief overview of where the project's got to over the last eight months. So, yeah, as I said, it's a very short time frame, and there's actually an awful lot of progress has been made. The consortium has managed to basically come up with a fully designed train. Key componentry for the hydrogen fuel cell traction have all been delivered and essentially ready for pre-assembly, which is now done at MSIP. And a really positive sort of results from the project are what we're trying to set out is to sort of start supplying, sort of support that Scottish supply chain. So we've engaged so companies that can help in basically build the fuel cell rafts. So ultimately, the train is going to have this new traction, but the idea is that actually, if you look at the train when it's all finished, you won't actually notice that it's a fuel cell / electric drivetrain, because the fuel cells and the batteries will be sort of mounted underneath the train, and the rafts that where the fuels and the batteries will be housed, they'll be made by Scottish companies, which is a real success story. Acola and partners have managed to find a company that does the low voltage harnesses as well, sort of, yeah, for all safety purposes. And even on the interior and the upholstery, we're getting a Scottish company to do that. As said, another objective of the project obviously was to get job creation. So once again, we've got jobs being created at Bowness to work on the actual engineering on the train, but also at MSIP. Jobs are going now and have been created to help with that pre-assembly of all the components, and these are all highly skilled jobs and sort of a new technology, and this is really exciting. Another great sort of result from the project is that we've managed to attract some private sector investment. So Angel Trains have essentially come on board and invested in electrolyzer and refueling equipment. So this train will actually have an on-site refueler now. So this electrolyzer will take green electricity, and so we'll have our own green hydrogen, which is going to be supplied on site. And once again, this is sort of the thing that at the Accelerator really tried to set out and get that sort of sustainable hydrogen production going. The other thing that Angel Trains have provided with is the seats for the interior. So they've used reused Bendolino seats from some of their existing rolling stock. And also that's another sort of great thing. We're looking at sort of to reuse some materials. So it's also a sort of recycle / reuse, make better use of the materials that we've already got. And the last thing I'd like to mention about the project is, so obviously this is a project like a demonstrator train really to see if we can convert this train to hydrogen traction. But obviously the point is really to see and if we can scale this up to sort of whole fleet conversions. So project partner Arup has done a route to market study and see which routes in Scotland might be really suitable to do some trial for fleets, and sort of the focus was really on sort of West Scotland, sort of these West Highland routes, and also in the north of Scotland, and turned out that sort of up in sort of Inverness, Wick Thurso, that would be really a good potential for hydrogen. And on the back of that, Hytrans have now commissioned a feasibility study to really look at sort of how we can maybe convert an old class 158. So this is a diesel rolling stock that are not quite ready for retirement yet, and see if we can do a small fleet that we can then convert into hydrogen traction. And as part of that study, it's also very important. Once again, we're looking at sort of production at scale of hydrogen. Can we link that up to sort of locate suitable hydrogen refueling places? So really looking at sort of where's a good place, not just for the logistics of the trains, but also where do we generate the renewable energy that we can then use to electrolyze water and produce hydrogen and store it in a suitable location. So that's all part of that, and this is going to hopefully be part of a sort of phase 3 of the project. So I guess the last project that we'd like to speak about is the Low Carbon Applications Test Center, LOCATE. So LOCATE will be a powertrain testbed for hydrogen fuel cell and battery electric drivetrains, and this is very much at a platform level. So it's part of once again a Scottish Enterprise and Transport Scotland initiative in the low carbon transport program, and the point of this centre would be that it allows for say manufacturers and system integrators to simulate real world duty cycles, and it will really sort of specialize in heavy duty road and niche vehicles. So once again, here's where hydrogen for transport applications will have a big role, we think. The heavy duty segment is basically difficult for batteries to manage because of the large duty cycles, very energy intense, and the point is that basically the powertrain test bed will allow companies to basically replace the on-road testing, which is obviously very expensive and requires the development of an entire vehicle, which might be costly. So basically, it's a way to accelerate that route to market and also reduce the cost of product development. And obviously, the uniqueness of this center is that it combines that sort of hydrogen fuel cell and the battery electric drivetrains with the capability from power electronics and the hydrogen and the heavy duty vehicle segment. So once again, partners are there in all the logos. And as I said, I put a picture of a Mirai there, which is obviously not a heavy duty vehicle, but it kind of tells you that what this will be looking at is how the various elements in an electric drivetrain sort of have to work together to optimize a vehicle and its duty cycle. So there's a lot of things that we can sort of optimize and balance, and that kind of brings me to the next slide, which tells us where this powertrain testbed kind of sits on a product development line. So obviously we can do testing completely in an office on the left hand side of this diagram, where basically all we do is a lot of simulations, but it's obviously not representing a real world situation. Whereas on the right hand side, we've got a fully developed vehicle that we just send on the road, and we try to do some testing there. But at that point, the cost of the development are very high. And so ideally for a project like a systems integrator or an OEM, you want to sit somewhere in the middle of that diagram where you do your system optimization. So what the powertrain testbed allows you to do is sort of to test it at a point of your development where you have all your components ready, and you want to see how they work together to give you the optimum sort of performance, which can be quite different for different vehicles. So a bus will have a different duty cycle, obviously, than say a refuse collection vehicle or a 44-ton lorry, and they'll have different ancillary loads. So once again, a bin lorry will have to do some compaction whilst it's driving around the town. Whereas if you maybe have a 44-ton lorry, you might have some refrigeration on board, and all these things need optimizing. And this is where LOCATE will have a unique sort of capability. So we're looking at some sort of maybe higher level benefits that we might get from LOCATE. So once again, it's coming back to that sort of, well, what we're trying to do within the Hydrogen Accelerator, and it's really sort of, first of all, trying to create some unique Scottish capability in the powertrain development for fuel cell electric and battery electric. Really try to support OEMs and system integrators to develop their products, to sort of accelerate the route to market of their products, and really sort of reduce the cost of their product development. And going further, obviously, this once again is creating those skills and expertise in these technologies, sort of new low carbon technologies, so I'll come to that in a bit. But once again, this is really working closely with MSIP and Dundee, and working closely with their skills academy, sort of really try to get that expertise in Scotland. Obviously that's back to the other point as well. Really try to develop that supply chain and create those high value jobs in Scotland. Pardon. So just to give you a bit of an idea what a powertrain testbed would look like. So yeah, I guess the image on the left is probably a little bit what it's going to look like. You might get a vehicle, but you might just get essentially a chassis, but you basically roll it into what you call a test cell, where it sits on a low vibration plate, and then at the wheel hubs you mount these dynamometers, and they allow you to basically start driving your vehicle, and the dynamometers will sort of measure the response. You can use the dynamometers as well to test the braking. So once again, one of the great things about electric drive is that you can do regenerative braking. So you generate electricity when you're actually doing braking, and which will boost your energy efficiency. So that's kind of what it would look like. So yeah, as for location, so just a quick few slides on the project and where it stands. So it was decided that the optimum place for or location for locate would be MSIP. It obviously has a lot of space, and some of the great things about MSIP is that obviously it's already the home of Scottish sustainable mobility. It will have a skills academy, which will link in perfectly with these new kind of skills, and even more importantly, as Fiona mentioned, it's procuring a hydrogen refueling station for the Dundee bus project, and this hydrogen refueler will obviously be a good source of hydrogen for the actual testing. So as you can see, the location of locate will be very closely situated around that refueling station. So there'll be sort of hopefully a number of companies and facilities there that sort of all in that hydrogen space, and so once again also creates a great sort of synergy between different companies and facilities. Yeah, just a quick sort of overview of what locate might look like. So so basically this be kind of the facility overview, like a test cell plus some control room and some power electronics for the actual test equipment, and there'll be some prep areas where the vehicles or chassis can be rolled in, can be prepared for testing, and then there'll be some offices. So yeah, once again, quick overview of the project. Also here, it's very busy on the procurement front at the moment. The equipment is being procured, and should hopefully some tender responses back next week. And we're working closely with a consultancy company, Adams Consulting, who are helping us to develop a brief for the facility design and some of the engineering aspects required, such as mechanical and electrical connections. And that procurement for those hopefully going to start once we've got the equipment tender back. Yeah, and we're still working very much about on the operations point of view as well. So once the facility will be built, it's obviously a matter of being able to operate, and this is, yeah, we're still working out how that's exactly going to operate, whether we do that in-house or whether get like another party to operate. So under development. Shall I hand back to you at this point, Fiona?
Yep. Okay, thank you, Martin. That's great. Yes, just to acknowledge that this year, soon, hopefully, the Scottish Government will be launching the hydrogen assessment as well. And what we will be doing in the Hydrogen Accelerator is really supporting that action plan and obviously the hydrogen policy statement to ensure that we maximise the opportunities, right across the various sectors, with 100 million of funding to really start to accelerate the uptake of hydrogen technologies across Scotland. Next slide. Right, our presentation is coming to a close. A few details of how you can contact us there. It's one more, Martin. And then at the very end, that's our, sorry, just go back to one. That's our offices. Can you go back one?
Sorry.
You may see the background. That's our offices at Waterbower House at Eden Campus. Absolutely lovely facilities. And a real home for innovation that I'm sure you'll hear about at another opportunity. One more. Thanks, Martin. This is just a little snapshot of some of the achievements that have been going on since the launch of the Hydrogen Accelerator. Some very exciting projects starting to come to fruition. So great opportunities. And thank you for listening, and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Many thanks, Fiona and Martin, for an excellent tour de force and an update. Just before I pass on to Ian to take over, I've got some announcements to make, which I think is always better to do when more people are sitting in their chairs. So the first thing is our Hydrogen Accelerator annual report is now downloadable from the Hydrogen Accelerator website, which was in a couple of slides ago. A very important aspect is we've got a vacancy for a new engineer stroke project manager to work on delivering these projects. So it's a very challenging and fast moving role, which we really need people like Martin and Fiona who are really adept and able to respond. So you can contact us, or you can find this on the university vacancy site. There's also an opening at Strathclyde for a Hydrogen Accelerator engineer based there to support the Hydrogen Accelerator. Graham will mention a little bit more about that shortly, and also he'll point out that there's a parallel post in the developing electrical revolution based out of Strathclyde as well. And for everybody here, the Hydrogen Accelerator has an up-to-date list of funding on its webpage on the Working with Industry section. So our prime role is to try and get resources out there and activity out there, and we're more of a catalyst. So Graham from Strathclyde is a very important member of the team, as are Strathclyde, and I'm just going to ask Graham to say a few words before passing over to Ian to do the questions and answers.
Yeah, thanks very much, John. Yeah, just I'm Graham Burt from the University of Strathclyde, where I direct the Institute for Energy and Environment, and I'm the lead academic for the Power Network Demonstration Centre. Just want to echo John's thanks to Martin and Fiona for that excellent presentation. You can see the extent of the work that has been achieved in a very short period of time, and also the extent of the opportunity to draw from those projects and play that insight and understanding and de-risking from one project into the next. So please do make use of that opportunity. The partnership between Strathclyde and St Andrews draws on very complementary skills and also allows us to better understand how we might help Scotland pursue some of these major opportunities. Was John mentioned there, DARE Scotland, Driving the Electric Revolution Scotland, where we're making sure that Scottish expertise in heavy duty vehicles is recognised nationally across the UK. And the team in DARE Scotland supporting us, including Dan Cutting, may well have been in touch with a number of you as well. That's supporting electrified powertrains for transport applications, as well as energy and also industry applications. So we're drawing on Scottish funding, local funding, and also national UK funding. And as John has said, there's opportunities. We've got Richard Knight on here, who's the technology director at PNDC, looking to fill a post. So watch out on the LinkedIn postings for those opportunities, and please do signpost those to talented individuals who can join us in making this impact going forward. So thank you very much. Thanks, John.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Ian, you can take over now. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks to John, to Graham, to Fiona and to Martin for that really useful input. We're very happy to take questions, comments and discussion either by posting things into the normal conversation box on the right hand side or by using the hand raising symbol. What I'd like to do is start by posing questions particularly aimed at anybody in the audience who's from private companies who are operating in or who would like to operate in the hydrogen economy. And I guess my question as a starting point would be, on the basis of what you've seen, do you think this fulfills a need within the hydrogen economy in Scotland? And are there any things that you think might well be missing? Stephen Turner, if you just turn on your mic and join us.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Steve from Kagan Vehicle Technologies, and we're very much looking to get involved in the hydrogen sector. At the moment, we're offering very much what Arcola does, but in 3.5 ton to 7.5 ton vehicle sector. So the kind of lighter duty vehicles. I was interested in the Locate facility, but I see there's only one test cell in there, and I would imagine that demand for that facility is going to rise, because we're looking to locate into Dundee as well, and hopefully be complementary to Arcola. So I would imagine demand for that facility is going to be pretty high, based on my experience working in the automobile industry, doing design and development. You know, worked with a number of OEMs who had multiple test cells because of the demand on them. Is there any plans to expand it at all? Is there room for expansion?
Martin, I think that could well be one for you. Oh, and Fiona. Fiona's going to jump in with a response. Fiona, please.
We're double acting.
Yeah, absolutely. Interchangeable at all times.
Thank you, Stephen. So what we've got at the moment is phase 1, and the investment was through Transport Scotland. However, there will be phase 2, and as you rightfully say, there is plans to actually expand that facility. And I think when you looked at Martin's presentation, the facility that we actually have at MSIP is pretty vast, and we have room to actually expand. So very much so. Take your point there. Yep, thank you.
Okay, so I guess part of the answer is after an initial proving period, there could well be opportunities for expansion. Graham, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I was just going to compliment Fiona's statement by saying we've also got the investments that have been attracted through the DER challenge, Driving the Electric Revolution challenge, which is bringing powertrain testing capability, which allows us to do those integrated powertrains prior to the platform level testing. So I think you're seeing it in the complement of capabilities that have been built up around Scotland. I believe that, as well as seeing that growth, we're finding very efficient ways to support the development of these innovative powertrains and vehicles.
Great, thanks very much indeed. I see Douglas Spalding has just raised a really interesting question in the chat box. Douglas, do you want to come in and expand on that yourself, or I can read it out as you wish?
Hi, no problem. Douglas Spalding here from Arup. Obviously, we're involved in the projects you're talking here, but the point being that when you start to look at a number of the hydrogen accelerator activities and how are they connected with the activities in Aberdeen, St Fergus, Grangemouth and Port Cromarty, which are all obviously potential significant hydrogen production centres.
I think that's a really good point, particularly given the comments that Fiona made towards the end of the presentation there around the hydrogen assessment and the hydrogen action plan. Fiona, do you want to come in on that?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Douglas. No, thank you for your question. Yeah, I mean, you may have heard me say about collaboration in the hydrogen sector. I'm originally from Aberdeen City Council, so very much part of what we were doing in the hydrogen space, but we're linking right across Scotland. So as part of our work with Transport Scotland is with my colleague Martin, we're looking at carrying out regional assessments to ensure that we're not missing any opportunity within specific regions to maximise the opportunities for hydrogen technologies and import and export potential as well.
Great, thank you. John, I think you wanted to come in on that also.
Just to add what Fiona said, we're working very closely with Cromarty.
Yeah.
We are a bit racist, though. We're worried about the colour of our hydrogen. So, you know, we think that Scotland is the one place in the UK that you can develop green hydrogen. So, you know, for us, it's green hydrogen first, and not
personally, I'm not so enthusiastic about blue, because there's a lot of risk, and there's a lot of support already from large multinationals on blue hydrogen, whereas green hydrogen is much more bottom up.
Yeah.
Fiona is going to correct me, I think.
No, I'm not going to correct you at all, John. I think also it's about lessons learned from the past and making sure that, we look at on a regional basis, like the Highlands, for instance, that rural economy with the city, that, you have some fantastic opportunities there, and hence why we really want to maximise these opportunities. So we engage across all sectors to really try and support the different initiatives going forward. Yeah.
But I think it's also fair to say, Fiona, is it that given the expansion, particularly of offshore wind around Scotland, the opportunities for green hydrogen and the fact that green hydrogen is identified currently as a bit of a bottleneck mean that actually there's potentially quite substantial growth in that area over the next few years.
Absolutely, and as we start to develop the demand side, particularly around transport applications, that's really allowing particularly wind developers to actually make their business case stack up and to start to get deployment underway. And there's no place better than Scotland with the right ingredients of wind and water to do really large scale production of hydrogen, green hydrogen. I put in there.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that economy. Yeah.
Marek Juszczak has just raised a very interesting question in the chat relating to the skills aspect of this as well. Marek, do you want to come in and say a bit about
that? Yes, hello everyone. The question is based how the oil and gas engineers or the professionals who's ready to transform to the hydrogen industry role, how they can be successful transit to the industry, as the specific of oil and gas jobs require different skills. So any upskill courses, some help from the institutions, from academic institutions, from companies, and to successful transit into the position.
I think that's a really interesting question, is what support is there available to help this transition from one sector to another? John, to you.
Yeah, it's a beautiful question, and the first thing I would say is we've got a job available which would admirably suit somebody with experience in the oil and gas industry. So there's an awful lot of transferable skills already that would be perfect for the Hydrogen Accelerator. So we're very keen to see people like that coming into the industry. But yeah, the even bigger point is about skills, and that's a really major challenge and opportunity. If we can develop the skills across Scotland, then we can really implement the industry. And Cromarty, Orkney, Lewis, and MSIP are all engaging with colleges, as are we, and it's very high on Skills Scotland radar at the moment. So it's a really important thing, and we're coalescing and acting there, but it's really important.
Thanks. And also Patrick McCarthy, on that point, Patrick McCarthy's just raised the question about what the Energy Skills Partnership is doing with further education institutes to this growth sector. Certainly one of the things that immediately springs to my mind is the work that Michelin Scotland Innovation Park are doing around the Skills Academy. And I think Martin referred to that in the presentation. The fact that MSIP are developing a skills academy around low carbon technology skills, I think, is a really useful starting point for this, particularly for this part of Eastern Scotland. Anybody like to add anything else on that?
Ian.
Sorry, yeah, Patrick, far away.
No, I don't want to interrupt there. Somebody put their hand up politely, I think, but what I was going to say was I recall my time at Edinburgh College when we were looking at contemporary building and construction, modular construction. I remember sitting with our head of engineering and saying, why aren't we teaching this? And the comment was, well, nobody's asking for it. So if this is, so how do you influence the colleges? And that's my comment regarding the Energy Skills Partnership. They won't teach this stuff if there's not a demand for it from SMEs and from the sector. So this getting in at that level seems to me to be crucial. Certainly not an expert in that area. It's just an observation.
Great, thank you very much. Fiona, did you want to come in there?
Yes, just on the back of what Patrick was saying there, thank you for your comments there. It should be acknowledged that Transport Scotland works very closely with the Energy Skills Partnership as well, looking at what skills are required within the sector for the future. So there is a raft of work going on that obviously we're not presenting on today, but maybe ask Transport Scotland, the Energy Skills Partnership, to join us at one point to actually, update everyone on what's going on in the sector.
Great, thank you.
I should just say that several companies are also agitating for skills. Arcola, some of the battery, and it's very much translates across into electric vehicles and batteries. So it's not. There's a big demand from the companies to get skilled people. It's not just pushing the skills onto the market.
Arcola Energy, with setting up their site at Dundee, they're looking for 135 individuals to join their company, and are struggling to try and attract those highly skilled jobs in Scotland. So they do need that level of support, as John says, and other companies as well.
I want to bring in Greg as well, Greg Cool from MSIP, who's obviously been very involved in the process of developing the Skills Academy. Greg.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. It was just to point out that Jim Brown from the Energy Skills Partnership is heavily involved in helping us put the Skills Academy together, and our advisory board draws from both academia and local and national businesses to try and put together curricula that actually are meaningful and will try and answer the needs of businesses going forward. We hope ultimately to have about 250 learners through the gate, as it were, physically on site, but to have an impact more largely and to be an asset for Scotland in general.
Brilliant, thanks, Greg. I want to pick up now on a couple of questions that have appeared in the chat box, because Sean Field from University of St Andrews has said, what's the biggest barrier to advancing green hydrogen technology? Is it applying the technology to commercial transport? Is it financing the technological expansion? Or is it the economics, the profitability of green versus any other colour of hydrogen? And I want to connect that to a point that Ross Irvin from EDF Renewables put, which is EDF are obviously supporting the growth of green hydrogen, and Ross has said there's lots of synergies, but the challenges are in economics and distribution. So I'll bring in Ross first, if that's okay. Ross Irvin, are you available to come in and say a little bit about what you perceive the barriers for the deployment of green hydrogen?
Yeah, thanks very much, Ian. Yeah, I think for us at EDF, it's we look at it for a lot of projects. Grid connections are a challenge in some remote areas, and how we can get hydrogen in there as a route to market for the asset and produce large scale green hydrogen. But then often where the grid connections are challenging, transporting a lot of hydrogen from those sites is also a challenge. So it's that sweet spot of where the wind farms or solar plants located versus where the demand for hydrogen actually is. And then this ability of a long-term price for hydrogen and forecasted views on that compared to gas prices and fossil fuel prices. Right now it's not brilliant, and that makes it very challenging to construct large-scale projects based on current economics. But we're trying to look at every angle we can do. Is there long-term agreements you can put in place with train networks, for example, and haulage fleets and everything else that provides a certainty for both parties that one's got a good source of hydrogen long term, and we've got a stable revenue stream for the projects we need to build them, similar to what a CFD we could bring as an alternative to that. So it's a good focal point for us as a company, and trying to develop models and things like that for it as well.
Great.
Welcome anyone else who's used the support on it.
And looking at Sean's original question, the one thing that you've intimated is that there doesn't appear to be a technological barrier so much as a logistics, systems and financial barrier. Is that fair?
It's mostly, I think a lot's down to the cost of the electrolyzers now as well, and the systems required to produce compressed hydrogen. Even if you were to assume a very low electricity price going into it, the economics of the green hydrogen you produce, it does struggle right now. But as things like this Accelerator project get more traction, which is getting a huge amount of traction right now, that brings down the cost drastically.
And as Fiona has just added in the chat there, the renewable transport fuel obligations is a very useful incentive to help sort of shift the market in that direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sean, I've paraphrased your question, Sean Field. I don't know whether there's anything else you wanted to come back on at that.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks very much indeed. Also, just keep an eye on the chat box there. Greg Cool has helpfully posted a link for more details of the MSIP Skills Academy, which is really interesting for those of you who want to look at that. There's been a lot of work going on in the background about the Skills Academy, and I think this is an excellent example of how skills institutions can work closely together on addressing a big problem. Fiona, you also just mentioned review of renewable transport fuel obligations and revision in September of this year.
Yes, that's the plan, Ian. Yep.
Great, thank you. Any further questions or comments that anybody wants to raise at this stage? No, I think that's probably covered quite a lot. Really interesting. Thank you very much indeed, everyone, for participating. That's been a really interesting session. The next industry club session. Oh, perfect timing, Martin. Well done.
How do I do it?
Yeah. A round of applause. Beautiful. So we've got a session on Wednesday, the 15th of September, same timing as always. At the moment, we don't have speakers lined up. We're working in the background to try and do something on major policy developments, and particularly around the hydrogen assessment and action plan, I think. Is that correct? Can anybody from the Hydrogen Accelerator clarify on that?
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you. So that could be quite an interesting point to have a debate about where the national policy around hydrogen creates opportunities for companies working in that sector. And I think if we can make that the focus for that session, that should be quite an interesting session. Is there anything else, Hydrogen Accelerator people, that I have forgotten to mention at this stage? No, that's all good. Just got one quick question that's just come in from Alex Reed. What consideration is being given to the current and future challenges in securing HGV drivers? Oh, that's an interesting one. Do we know anything about that? And I guess that comes down to national skills policy, does it? Presume.
Hopefully, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are more fun to drive.
Oh, really? Okay, that's good to know.
Well, I enjoy driving a hydrogen vehicle.
Fantastic. And maybe there's a potential application for a test bed for the locate facility there. Could presumably also be used in some ways as a training facility. Okay, thank you very much indeed, everybody, for participating. It's been really good to see you all, and hopefully see you all in September. If you drop out of this Teams meeting, if you leave this Teams meeting, you will still be logged into the GatherTown website, and you can still network with people within GatherTown for the next half an hour as well. Oh, I've got a last minute one from Patrick. Heard rumours of a Scottish enterprise low carbon innovation zone at COP26. We might have to put our brains together offline to think about that one, Patrick, unless anybody wants to answer it right now. Okay.
I can answer Patrick afterwards if he leaves his email address.
Yeah, and Ed has just said check with Nigel Holmes, which is always a good starting point. Okay, that's really good. I'll finish there before any more questions come in. Thank you very much indeed, everybody, for participating. Really good to see you all, and hope to see you in September. Goodbye.